Valentine's Day 2024. There were broken hearts in Pittsburgh as the Penguins, it seemed, hit rock bottom. PPG Paints Arena featured empty seats as the Penguins dropped their third straight game.
It's not just a loss.
The team appeared stressed, self-conscious, tired, uninspired, yet playing with a tight grip. It took them more than 9 minutes to register a shot on goal. In fact, they hadn't scored more than 3 goals in the game since January 8th, and a wildcard spot seems all the more out of reach. Erik Karlsson hasn't worked out. Rickard Rakell also hasn't worked out. Ryan Graves has been a disaster. Evgeny Malkin has hit a wall. Jake Guentzel is out for a month. And behind all this is general manager Kyle Dubas, who has bided his time, watching, waiting, now on the verge of deciding his next move. Is this really the last gasp for a team that won 3 Stanley Cups since 2009? In Toronto, the Maple Leafs, like the Penguins, are notoriously known as a soft team, quote-unquote. But its woes fall more on the lack of depth behind the Big Four. Most of that a result of these main 4 players eating up all the cap space. Pittsburgh also lacks depth behind their star players, but the situation is considerably different. Most of the core is on team-friendly deals, but it's their age combined with a lack of prospects and draft capital that make the organization's situation particularly daunting. One thing is for certain, these are not the Penguins of the 2010s, and Dubas has his work cut out for him. In this video, we'll explore what's gone wrong, where the team might go from here, and what to do with pending free agent Jake Guentzel at the 2024 trade deadline. And the big question, are we witnessing the end of an era? Looking to the recent past, the Penguins haven't won a playoff series in 6 years, and looking to the near future, there's a lot of talk the Penguins are going to be atrocious within 2 years. But let's start with the now. There's a long way to climb to get into playoff position, and the team's schedule down the final stretch is brutal. March alone features matchups with Edmonton, Boston, Dallas, Colorado, and Carolina, all teams that are likely to make the playoffs. It's a long stretch to believe anything's going to happen this season, right? Unless they run the table. And so, the attention might turn to the coach. Is it time to fire Mike Sullivan, who's been the team's head coach since 2015-2016? There was already belief Sullivan was on the hot seat even before the season began. Penguins fans would point to several failures on Sullivan's part. In 2020, he took too long to commit to Tristan Jarry and never gave the Guentzel-Malkin-Rust line a go in the playoffs, despite that being the team's best line for a significant part of that season. In 2021, the team relied too heavily on Brian Dumoulin and the pairing of Mike Matheson and Cody Ceci. Meanwhile, Sullivan ran the Guentzel-Crosby-Rust line into the ground during the playoffs, even as their production fell off the map. In 2022, about a bad luck. With Crosby out in Game 6, the Penguins blew a series lead for the second straight year, the Rangers winning in overtime of Game 7. In 2023-2024, both units of the power play have struggled, which might point to it being the fault of the scheme and not the players. Now, firing the coach is not a magic panacea. It worked in 2009 and in 2016, but is this time different? The Penguins are old, after all, and the bottom 6 never scores. Is that Sullivan's fault? It could be they never score because most of the time they're starting in the defensive zone, meaning Sullivan really caters to the top 6. Or maybe they're just not talented. Yes, you can clearly see examples of former Penguins like Teddy Bluger and Sam Lafferty succeeding in Vancouver where they didn't in Pittsburgh, but that's a bit of cherry picking for my taste. At the end of the day, I think the team is simply getting old and lacks talent. There's only so much influence a coach can have in such a situation. Another big issue is the underwhelming performances this team has received from players with larger contracts. Defenseman Ryan Graves is on a long-term deal, eating up $4.5 million in cap space, and is known to be a weak link. Rakell scores a goal every month in return for a $5 million cap hit. Evgeny Malkin, who Sidney Crosby lobbied to keep on board as part of the Keeping the Band Together saga of 2022, has hit a wall, and he's eating up $6 million himself. Meanwhile, Erik Karlsson, at the age of 33, hasn't been the fit Dubas was hoping for. Karlsson was supposed to make the power play great again. Instead, it's been among the worst in the league. And amazingly, if you dig into Karlsson's history, he scores most of his points at even strength anyway. Most power plays he's been on have actually been pretty mediocre. And behind all these big names who have disappointed is, well, nothing. Nothing except, of course, Jake Guentzel. Guentzel, who turns 30 at the beginning of next season, is scoring at a point-per-game clip and is a pending unrestricted free agent. He would attract a nice return at the March 8th trade deadline, but is trading one of your best players the answer? I think in this situation, it could be warranted, as long as the return is right. So there's no way any of us can speculate whether they should trade him or not unless we know the content of the return packages. A king's ransom? Then yes, pull the trigger. Otherwise, just keep him. And why? You've already committed to the keeping the band together act, and beyond that, there's genuinely not a lot Dubas can do here. Rakell, Graves, and Brian Rust are locked in longer term. Malkin's contract runs another 2 seasons, meaning the scouting staff is now forced to dig for value in free agency. The Boston Bruins did just that, signing James Van Riemsdyk to a $1 million contract in 2023. He now has 34 points in 49 games. But beyond that, even drafting well won't do anything now, because even if you find value in the later rounds, it'll be years before they make the team. And by then, these aging stars will be gone. Now look, I might be crazy, but I think the Penguins always have a glimmer of hope, as long as Crosby is the player he is right now. The power play struggles have a lot to do with how this season has gone. Maybe it could be as simple as moving Letang back up to power play number 1 and getting rid of Todd Reirden, or maybe it's hopeless. It's ironic, my last video was about what a fantastic human being Sidney Crosby is, but I wonder if killing them with kindness inadvertently led to Crosby having too much say in the future of the franchise. The Penguins just couldn't betray their love affair with Crosby, and I completely understand that. However, I think it's on Crosby to not only understand, but accept the situation. If not, I hate to say it, but there's many icons in NHL history who were traded for the greater good of the franchise. Can he handle being part of a rebuild? I think that's the question here. There are a lot of tough discussions ahead for this once great, now beleaguered franchise, likely on the verge of the last gasp of an era it'll never forget. What are your thoughts? Which fork in the road do you think Dubas takes next? And please make sure to subscribe for part 2, because if the Penguins somehow run the table, you know I'm going to have to follow up here. Thanks as always for your support. For Go Zone Hockey, this is Charlie, signing off.